TV on C-SPAN 3, working with our cable affiliates as we explore America.
In Hawaii, Democratic Governor David Ige is seeking a second term against Republican State Representative Andria Tupola. They met earlier this week in Honolulu for their final debate before the election. This is 50 Minutes.
Live from the KITV4 Island News Studio, the Hawaii Gubernatorial Debate, a KITV4 Island Vote Special.
Good evening, I'm Paula Akana, and welcome to the KITV4 Island Vote gubernatorial debate between our two leading candidates for governor for Hawaii, Democrat David Ige and Republican Andria Tupola. Also, our lieutenant governor candidates, Democrat Josh Green and Republican Marissa Kearns. They'll be joining us later in the evening. Well, tonight's forum will be broken down into 4 segments. The first will start now. Each candidate will be asked a question and given a minute to respond. And then the other candidate will have 30 seconds to provide a rebuttal. Now, Mr. Ige won the coin toss earlier today. So the first question is for you, Mr. Ige. The constitutional amendment on funding public education will be on the ballot, but it won't count. We're basically back to square one. This is a yes or no question. Is public education funded well enough?
No, I do believe that the ballot was an opportunity to give voters the choice of providing additional resources for the Department of Education.
As governor, were you not able to help facilitate more money for the schools?
We certainly have. In fact, my budgets included the highest appropriations for our public schools in a long time. As you know, we committed to air condition 1,000 classrooms all across the state because we wanted to make an investment in the environment in which our children learn. I'm proud of the fact that we actually completed 1,300 classrooms all across the state, really the biggest investment in the environment, our learning environment, in our public schools in a long time. In addition, we've been working on a new blueprint, including 40 community meetings to talk about the education system of the future. The new blueprint gets away from the one-size-fits-all and is committed to empowering schools and trusting those closest to the children to make the most important decisions on behalf of our students. I look forward to increasing funding to public schools as we move forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ige. 30 seconds for your rebuttal, Mr. Tupola.
You know, it's a good question that you're asking in regards to adequate funding. However, there's 2 parts to the equation. It's not just the funding, but it's the effectivity of every single dollar. What we've seen is a huge budget, which the DOE gets about half of the state budget with operational and CIP together, but yet with a $1.9 billion budget, not enough of an impact for the students and for the classroom. And as governor, I'm committed to making sure that we have more efficiency within that department.
All right, thank you very much. This next question is for you, Ms. Tupola. We're a little more than a week away from Election Day, and once again, Hawaii's low voter turnout gets talked about a lot across the country, but not fixed. What would you do to get people to go out and vote?
Well, I think 2 things come to mind. First off, of course, people come out when they're compelled and they feel like they can support a candidate that actually represents their interests. What we've seen in the state of Hawaii is decades of career politicians, people working for special interest groups, and really not talking about the things that matter the most to the people. We've really tried to change our campaign, make sure to be more grassroots in the communities on all the neighbor islands so that we're talking about the issues that matter. The second thing is making sure that we increase the ability for our residents to participate in the process. It's always frustrating to come to the Capitol and try to testify and be a part of something and then get cut off or unsure of when to testify. And we need to have actual electronic hearings available for all of our neighbor island residents. I think this would greatly increase participation and have people come out to vote on the day of the elections if they were more a part of the process.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ige, your rebuttal.
I have been committed to making it easier to vote because I think that that's fundamentally important. I supported the mail-in ballot, and we have a pilot this year for Kauai where it's 100% mail-in ballot. I've supported same-day registration. So I just want all of you watching this debate to remember that even if you're not registered, you can show up on Election Day, register to vote, and cast your vote for the candidate of choice.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ige, this next question is for you. You took a lot of heat for that infamous 38-minute delay after the false missile alert. How can you assure our residents that they can trust our alert system and you as the leader?
You know, we have been open and transparent in explaining and evaluating the events that occurred with the false missile alert. We have new leadership in place, and we identified and implemented changes that would assure that what occurred on that day would never happen again. And since that time, we've responded very well to the flooding on the north shore of Kauai and in East Honolulu. And when the eruption occurred in Hawaii Island, we had the team on scene, in action, and ready to go. I'm proud of the work that we've done. You know, civil defense is about the county, state, and federal government working together. As you know, we received a presidential proclamation in record time. You know, we had more than 500 FEMA professionals on the ground helping us respond to all of these emergencies. I'm proud of the actions that we've taken.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Tupola, your rebuttal.
You know, during the false missile alert, there are a lot of people that I think will forever be changed because of the feelings they went through and losing their life. And I need to say that I believe that we could do more as a state, not just in regards to the department itself, but activating our communities. You know, as a representative for the West Side, I was active in creating the Wake Up West Side Emergency Preparedness Fair, making sure that each of our communities and our counties are ready for these disasters, making sure that the supplies that we need aren't just on Oahu Island, but throughout the state is something that I'm committed to doing as governor so that we can become more prepared and proactive.
All right. This next question is for you, Ms. Tupola. In the past week, we've seen bombs sent through the mail, a mass shooting at a synagogue. President Trump then referred to the media as the true enemy of the people. He is the leader of our country and of your party. Do you agree with his statement there?
I think that what's going on in our country is a sign that all of us need to take personal responsibility for. We have an increasingly divisive environment where more and more people are pointing fingers and pointing blame when really we need to take on the responsibility for ourselves for anything that happens. Culprits and terrorism should be opposed. Any hate crimes should be heavily opposed, and that we should make sure that the ultimate penalties are paid to those individuals that have caused that. And I think that as a country, we need to have leaders that can be able to bring that unity and make sure that people feel safe here. And so I think that pushing out of these two incidents, what we need to take away from it is that personal responsibility and making sure that we have a stronger public safety system here in our state so that our residents feel safe.
Now, but the president saying that the true enemy was the media. Do you agree with that?
I think that all of us take responsibility, and we should all take responsibility for our own statements and our own actions.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ige, your rebuttal.
You know, it's absurd to think that the media is the enemy. We know for all of our republic that the media is really the antidote. Transparency and being able to understand what government is doing has been an important part of the history of this country. And it's unfortunate that our president really believes and views the media as the enemy.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ige, this next question is for you. Is Hawaii really prepared for a major natural disaster? Our partners at Civil Beat recently ran a series of reports that showed we're not.
Any major natural disaster really unleashes the full power of Mother Nature. We work vigilantly 24/7 through 365 days of the year to be prepared. We have exercises more than once a year that really allows us to imagine what might happen if we had a Category 5 storm through all of the islands. We do know that no amount of preparedness could ever be responsible if we get a Category 5 storm through Honolulu. And what we have been working on is encouraging communities to be prepared and to be sustainable on their own. We've had workshops. We have a template and a checklist helping them to organize assets, identify doctors and resources, and most importantly, be prepared should there be a natural disaster so they can begin to take care of themselves.
All right, thank you. Your rebuttal.
I do not think that the state of Hawaii is ready for these natural disasters, and one of the things that people talk about across the state is our food sustainability. Are we actually going to be sufficient and self-sufficient enough to take care of ourselves in the event that we might not be able to have barges come in and bring food? We import almost 90% of the food that we eat, and my opponent and his administration promised that we would double food production, and yet nothing happened. As governor, I'm going to be committed to increasing the agriculture budget and making sure that we can increase our food security for our state in the event of a disaster.
All right. Ms. Tupola, there's a lot of people who make too much money to qualify for affordable housing, but they can't really afford the affordable housing. Now, how do we help them?
Well, I think that step one is exactly what you said. Are we using the wrong definition of affordable? Absolutely. People are using the federal definition for HUD qualifications or other federal grants, which is actually not a realistic definition of what's affordable for our local Hawaii residents. And I think as governor, I need to make sure that when we talk about affordable housing, we're talking about the housing that's actually made for our local Hawaii residents. And after that, we need to support local developers, smaller companies that actually can build for this market. And lastly, something that's very detrimental to making sure that we can produce housing is the long permitting time that we have throughout the state. Our state has one of the longest permitting times in the country, sometimes during up to 17 months or more to get a permit in order to just build. And this is various agencies throughout the state, and as governor, I'm going to make sure to expedite that to make sure that we can actually build affordable housing within the time period and in the price range that people can afford.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ige, your thoughts on this?
You know, I'm committed to producing 10,000 homes by 2020 at all price points. We have a comprehensive housing plan that looks at redevelopment of public housing, a focus on affordable rentals, and using transit-oriented development to really speed development of affordable rentals here in the urban core. We have been working on different ways that we can make housing more affordable for all of our residents. And I recently joined with Local 5 in their mortgage program of no down payment, no carrying costs, really an effective way to get private sector mortgages to those communities to help.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Ige, within the state government, is there an adequate system in place for filing and investigating complaints of sexual harassment?
You know, we do take harassment-free workplace very seriously. We do have a sexual harassment or harassment officer for all of state government in the Department of Human Resources Development. Additionally, every agency has identified a harassment officer so that if someone feels that they are being harassed in the workplace, there is a way to anonymously move that complaint forward. You know, we do take harassment very seriously. We have a training program that all new employees must complete when they start working for the state of Hawaii. And we periodically require all employees to go through that program training so that they are aware about appropriate and inappropriate behavior in the workplace.
All right, thank you. Your rebuttal, Ms. Tupola.
I actually have attended the state training in regards to sexual harassment, and I think that's important not just to have the training, but making sure that individuals feel free and feel able to actually come forward and speak with somebody about the issues that they're facing. I believe that we can, of course, strengthen things in this area and work hand in hand with our law enforcement in regards to harassment cases throughout the state.
All right, thank you. Ms. Tupola, homelessness is much more than just an eyesore here in the islands. It affects businesses, it affects people's public safety. What new approach would you try to alleviate the problem?
You know, homelessness is definitely on the rise. You know, my opponent likes to say that the statewide numbers are down, but the reality is in Eva and Waianae, we saw an increase in homeless numbers. And the count earlier this year is actually based upon a voluntary count that's used called the point-in-time count, and that's mainly for federal funding. The important part to also notice is not just the numbers during the point-in-time count, but also the increase of people accessing these services. And many of these people are actually new individuals, which we haven't even addressed even a little bit how many people are coming into the state to become homeless. So I think step number one is that we have to kind of seal up some of the holes in this system so that we can make make sure to prioritize our local residents. The second thing we need to do is engage all of the partners, whether it's law enforcement, nonprofits, churches, community members, to be a part of the solution. We need to empower our community members and offer educational tools such as cleaning up credit scores and actually empowering them through community courts, which I helped to implement recently in Waianae.
Thank you. Your rebuttal, Mr. Ige.
You know, we have put together a comprehensive team to really tackle homelessness, and that really is made up of state, county, federal officials, and the private sector, including faith-based organizations and nonprofit. Only when we as a community can commit to reducing homelessness will we make progress. I'm proud that for 2 consecutive years, the number of statewide homeless individuals has gone down for the first time.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Ige, our next question comes from a Facebook viewer, Tanya Tabia, and she says, you recently did a survey from Stolen Stuff Hawaii. One of the questions was asked if you would support legalizing tasers or any tool to be used for self-defense. You answered no. Could you please explain why?
I do think that we, when you look at tasers and other weapons, that we have a system of, which is very good, leading in the country about responsible gun ownership and weapon ownership. So I do believe that we need to look at the issue of tasers and decide about what would be the best way to regulate the use of tasers or ability of individuals to have tasers. I am concerned that for those who are unaware or do not know how tasers should be used, and if there's no training program or there's no adequate information program, that it could be a very dangerous situation in our community. So what I'm looking for is a comprehensive program that would stake out what the regulations might be. We should have required training before tasers are allowed to be purchased, and we should set up a way to ensure that our community is safe. It's all about balance.
All right, thank you. Ms. Tupola.
What I'm looking for is action in regards to the rise of violent crime that we've seen in our state. The current administration is not taking the rise of crime seriously. We have a revolving door of criminals that are getting locked up and then let go, and yet we still haven't addressed this in our public safety system. Moreover, Stolen Stuff Hawaii is a group of individuals that have risen up to kind of take this into their own hands because they feel voiceless. So as governor, not only am I going to open up these conversations, but we have to have a real talk about rehauling and revamping our public safety system so that our community members feel safe.
All right, thank you. Ms. Tupola, this comes from one of our viewers, Stephen Crane. He asks, another issue on the ballot is the Constitutional Convention. Do you think Hawaii needs to hold a con-con?
I think the Constitutional Convention is a good way for us to get more people involved. This is going to be the election of delegates, and it's going to be a 45-day period by which many more people than just legislators will be able to voice their concerns. People are concerned about the possible cost for this. There might be concerns about environmental protections being overthrown. But at this point, with your earlier question about people not getting involved or not voting, this could be another program that can help people to come out and have their voices be heard. And after the Constitutional Convention, it still needs to be put on the ballot so people can vote on it. And I believe that since 1978 till now, there's definitely things that we could talk about as a state. But of course, I'm glad that it's on the ballot and that our state will decide if this is the way forward for us.
All right, thank you. Your rebuttal, Mr. Ige.
Certainly, I think this is an opportunity for all of the voters to cast their ballot about whether they believe it's time for a con-con or not. I am voting yes on that question because it has been 40 years since we've had a constitutional convention. And I really think that it's an opportunity for our community to get together, to look at priorities, and then provide a comprehensive look at constitutional changes.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ige, is Ms. Tupola prepared to be governor? Why or why not?
I do believe that the state of Hawaii is a $14 billion corporation and organization with 50,000 employees, there are many responsibilities that the chief executive has, from negotiating contracts with 14 bargaining units, from overseeing the departments in a wide range of areas, from budgeting and finance to accounting and general services and the public schools, University of Hawaii, and the public safety. This responsibility is huge, and it definitely requires a lot of learning. I do believe that I do have the experience, and as the 4 years has shown, am able to serve as Chief Executive Officer, and I don't believe that anyone can walk into the job without prior knowledge and experience.
All right, thank you. Your rebuttal, Ms. Tupola.
I think that my experience as a mother, as a community member, as a 4-year sitting legislator that served on 8 different committees, finance, human services, health, labor, transportation, public safety, higher ed, education, has led me to lead lots of different policy discussions across very important issues. And what our state desperately needs right now is less career politicians, more common sense, and of course, more collaborative solutions, because we cannot solve the systemic issues of our state with the same mindset in which they were created.
All right, thank you. Ms. Tupola, this question is for you. If you could give Mr. Ige a grade for his performance as governor, what would it be? And Mr. Ige, when you have your rebuttal, I'd like you to grade yourself and explain that grade. So go ahead, Ms. Tupola.
You know, weighing out everything that's happened in our state, and I would agree that this is a very big task to overcome and a very big task to undertake. Of course, there's respect for the public officials that do put their names out there to run to become governor, but the current administration, their ability to work together as well as work with the federal administration, the amount of federal funding that we've lost, the inefficiencies within the departments, the same problems that we've been facing over and over again, a deficient tax modernization system. We still have not enough leases going out in Department of Hawaiian Homelands. We're still inequitable in our funding for public school students. You know, I would say that the current administration is probably somewhere between a D and a C. And I'm a teacher, so I think I'm trying to weigh out everything on how it happened and how it went down, but definitely making sure to have the right team members in place would lead to more success within the lieutenant governor as well as each of the departmental heads, and then as well making sure that all the boards and commissions are actually filled with positions.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ige?
I would give myself a B. I know that we can do better, but I'm proud of the work that we've done. We've put together a terrific cabinet. I believe the best cabinet in the history of the state of Hawaii. You know, we've completed 5,300 new housing units, more than 3,000 of them affordable. We have a new blueprint for public education. Our early college program, expanding to every public high school, will allow students to take college courses and high school courses and finish and graduate with an Associate of Arts degree before they graduate high school. You know, I'm proud of the work that we've done.
All right, thank you very much. Now I have one question, and it's for both of you, and we'll do 1 minute each. Mr. Ige, do we have realistic energy goals, and are we on track to meet them?
We absolutely have realistic energy goals, and I'm proud that Hawaii is the first state in the country to sign on to the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement, because I do know that climate change is real and global warming is happening. Our 100% clean renewable energy for electricity was followed by the state of California. We see technology happening today, and it's accelerating our ability to generate clean renewable energy for electricity without burning fossil fuels. We are on track to hit our goals by 2020 and on track for 2030. And in fact, the Elemental Accelerator just published a study that said if we do it faster, we'll save even more money. And I'm convinced that we have the technology and the ability to do it quicker right now.
All right, Ms. Tupola, you have 1 minute to answer the same question. Do we have realistic energy goals, and are we on track?
This is a very interesting question. I just participated in a candidate forum in Maui, and there was actually energy enthusiasts that are saying that they don't believe that these goals are realistic, not because they don't want to meet them. It's because they believe that we are not actually there or funding it appropriately. Not only do I have a power plant in my district, but I actually personally walked through the power plant on the island of Hawaii and on the island of Maui as well as Kauai. I've been looking at the different energy solutions that they're putting forward. I think that the way forward is going to be different for every county as they're embracing different forms of how they they use energy. And I would say that as governor, I'm going to work more closely with these companies and with the community members, because one of the things that people are crying out is energy justice, meaning that they feel like some of these goals are pushing us so far forward that our energy is actually becoming more expensive. Right after your housing, your next biggest cost is your energy bill. And as governor, I want to get down to solving some of these problems and making sure that the cost of living is decreased for our residents.
All right, thank you. We're going to take a quick break right now. When we return, KITV4 Island News anchor Robert Kikaula and Civil Beat's politics and opinion editor Chad Blair is going to join us to ask our candidates more questions. All right, we'll be right back. Don't go away.
Live from the KITV4 Island News Studio, the Hawaii Gubernatorial Debate, a KITV4 Island Vote Special.
And welcome back to our KITV4 Island Vote Gubernatorial Debate. We're asking our state's two leading candidates questions on a variety of issues that are important to Hawaii. For our second segment tonight, we're joined by KITV4 Island News anchor Robert Kikaula and Civil Beat's politics and opinion editor Chad Blair. And I'm going to throw it over to Robert and Chad.
Paula, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Paula. Candidates, good evening. Governor David Ige and Representative Andria Tupola. The format for this section is the same as before. It's going to be 1 minute response for each question and 30 seconds rebuttal from the opponent.
And towards the end of this segment, we'll get to individual questions specific to each candidate. Let's start with this. It's a nearly $74 billion industry across the country. It generates about $17 billion in state taxes, most of it earmarked for education. But Hawaii is one of 5 states not included. Now, much of the country has been riveted over the past few weeks. Let me ask you, lottery, why not Hawaii? I will start with you, Mr. Tupola.
Thank you. Well, I think that every time we talk about an increase of revenue, the reason why people bring it up is because we use our taxpayer dollars so inefficiently. And so people are always led to believe that we don't have enough money, so we need to generate more. But what does this encourage? It encourages inefficiencies in our department. It encourages departments that have a bloated budget to continue on with waste. And so as governor, I'm committed to cutting this waste and making sure that we have more efficient departments. We need more equitable funding for our students. We need better pay for our teachers. But yet we have vacant buildings. We have consulting contracts that go out that don't get checked. There are so many things throughout the state that I think could actually generate that income that we need. And as governor, I'm going to be committed to making sure that there's more efficiency in that. And then we can talk about new programs. My concern is putting new programs on and then having more things fail. We need to fix the things that we have already.
Mr. Ige?
Andrea didn't answer the question. The question was whether you would support a lottery, and I oppose a lottery. I don't believe that the benefits of a lottery, the revenue that we would generate would really be worth the cost. The increased crime, having to deal with those who can least afford it tends to participate in a lottery more frequently than others.
The next question we'll send towards the governor first. Marijuana. One of 30 states, Hawaii is, that legalize it for medical purposes. Only 9 states in the country for recreational purposes. Again, tax-wise, a lot of it to education, closing in on $2 billion per year. Same question, Hawaii, why not recreational marijuana? Governor.
I oppose recreational marijuana because I don't believe that the state law should be different from the federal law. And as you know, marijuana is against federal law. The confusion created by the community is not a good thing. I have seen recreational marijuana passed in other states, and it's a growing industry in other areas. But I really do believe that the benefits of recreational marijuana would not exceed the social cost involved with medical marijuana. I do believe that our medicinal marijuana program is an excellent one. As you know, I implemented a cashless system here in the state for medical marijuana, which has facilitated the dispensaries to be able to conduct business in a more efficient and effective way.
Mr. Tupola?
You know, I also oppose the recreational use of marijuana. I support the medicinal use of cannabis. This has been an issue in our state, but I was the actual only legislator to hold a town hall, bring together the Department of Health as well as our marijuana dispensary business owners, and try to resolve some of the concerns that we've had. As I mentioned earlier, some of the programs in our state are sorely underfunded and actually barely get up off the ground or fail. And as governor, I'm going to be committed to making sure that this program is able to succeed and that the implementation as well as the laws that we passed as a legislature will actually be implemented and the businesses can succeed.
All right, Ms. Tupola, this question is for you. The state put out a massive report on sea level rise in December. An estimated $15 billion at least is estimated to be needed to save our roads and our infrastructure. And the clock is ticking. How would your administration help the state quickly adapt to rising seas, and how would you pay for it?
Well, I thank you for this question. It's, of course, a big issue when you see roads on the North Shore falling into the ocean, and we can't keep going with hiring safety systems every time a road falls in and we run a contraflow. The reality is we haven't taken any real steps towards making sure that we're addressing climate control and, of course, the rise of sea level. The first step that we need to take is determining what natural solutions that we can implement that won't hurt the environment, but that will actually help the problem. And once those solutions, whether it is an artificial reef, whether it is natural native Hawaiian techniques that were used, from there we have to determine the cost of it. As you said, where does the funding come from? There are federal grants that we can apply for and that we can use, but I don't think that we've actually even looked to an actual strategy, a price, and then gone out and asked for that money.
All right, Mr. Ige, your response.
You know, it's amazing that the President of the United States and the Republican Party are climate change deniers, because we do know that climate change is real and it's occurring right now. We have a climate adaptation commission who is looking at, published that report, which was fundamentally important to begin the dialogue, and we are taking action about moving our highways away from the shorelines.
All right, Mr. Ige, this question is for you. Hawaii has the worst cesspool problem in the country. Some 53 million gallons of raw sewage are being discharged every day into cesspools, which are essentially just holes in the ground for wastewater. Tax credits haven't worked. What would you do as governor to address this very urgent issue?
We are doing a couple of things. You know, we've had a series of town community meetings all across the state so we can begin the dialogue with the Department of Health, talking with the community about the challenges they have with the cesspools that are currently in place. I've heard from many of them as we've gone across the state that they are concerned and they don't have the resources to be able to change out the cesspools that they have in place. You know, we need to look at investing in new technology. There are breakthroughs all the time that helps to develop more efficient sewer systems that can help us deal with the cesspool problem all across the state. You know, one of our projects, Honolulu, a joint project with the city and the state, has a brand new biodegradable cesspool system, or sewer system, which is in 2 containers and can be a breakthrough that helps the residents all across the state.
All right, Ms. Tupola, your response.
Yeah, I don't think the state takes seriously enough environmental protections and controls, making sure that our oceans are clean. There's been runoff, not just for cesspools, but in other areas. And I think that we need to stop talking about things and actually do stuff. Because on the Big Island, this is an old issue. I've been in the legislature 4 years, and we've had this issue come up every single session. And so it's nothing new. I think that all of these reports and audits, many of them point to exactly what to do, but we needed an administration that's going to take more swift action.
Okay, this next question is specifically for each candidate. First, we'll start with Ms. Tupola. Homeless in Hawaii, the crisis. It's out of control. It's expensive. Will you ever foresee the state pretty much drawing a line in the sand, so to speak, to say enough is enough in helping? Can we afford to continue to help and act like there's a bottomless pit of cash to fix problems?
You know, one of the comments I made earlier was in regards to us actually patching up some of these holes. When we talk about homeless numbers across the state, it might have sort of gone down under the percentage. However, Eva and Waianae saw a huge jump in amount of homeless individuals. And of course, different agencies are moving individuals around, which doesn't help the problem. And I think that when people talk about the increase of the amount of people using these services, this increase is directly tied to people coming to our state to become homeless. homeless. It's directly tied with people that we don't account for that aren't residents of Hawaii, and people are crying out exactly what you said. Can we keep supporting this? So as a governor, I'm going to have to make more swift, direct actions towards making sure that we're sustaining and helping their local individuals get into housing, and then patching up these holes and making sure that we're applying for more federal grants that we need in order to address this.
One more question for Ms. Tupola. 5 of the 51 seats in the House, Democrat. All 25 state Senate, Democrat. It's tough being a Republican. How tough is it for you to be a Republican in Hawaii?
Well, I've seen that actually being a Republican is a way for me to differentiate myself. I think that in my community, I've had to really fight to let people know who I am and what I stand for. When you run as a Republican in Hawaii, you cannot be average. You got to be amazing. You have to go out there and really show that you're somebody different, that you work for the community, that you want to hear their voices. As a Republican representative, I've held 41 town halls over the past 4 years. I hold annual domestic violence awareness conferences, entrepreneurial conferences, emergency preparedness fairs, all above and beyond what I do at the legislature, because I care that much about the community. And I think that in our state, we've seen a lot of complacency when people get used to always being reelected. And as a Republican, every year you got to fight and make sure that people know that you're working for them. So it's been an honor for me to let people know that I am fighting for them and that I am a different type of Republican. I am a Hawaii Republican that fights for the local people and represents their voices.
Mr. Ige, this question is only for you. You defeated Representative Colleen Hanabusa in the primary, but she had a lot of support from Democrats, including top leaders in the State House and Senate. How do you foresee working another 4 years with the very same people who wanted to kick you out of office?
You know, I'm proud to be a Democrat, and I have worked with many of these leaders for many, many years. I have always been focused on the people's priorities, and the budgets that I've been developing and introducing into the legislature are driven by responding to the people's priorities. You know, I feel very comfortable when we put the budget together and we identify the priorities that we have, priorities of affordable housing, priorities of public schools and investments in the University of Hawaii, looking at public education and create a new blueprint that provides for empowerment of schools and community ownership of the programs that are so important. You know, I'm confident that all of our priorities are aligned. You know, in spite of the notion that I can't get along with them, they've passed more than 90% of my budget, and more than 90% of our initiatives are aligned, and we have been very successful in getting those things done.
Mr. Ige, Ms. Tupola, thank you very much. Paula, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Robert, Chad. We are going to take a quick break right now, but when we come back, the Lieutenant Governor candidates will join us to answer more questions about our state's second most powerful executive position and its role in serving you, the residents of Hawaii. We'll be right back.
Live from the KITV4 Island News Studio, the Hawaii Gubernatorial Debate, a KITV4 Island Vote Special.
All right, welcome back to our KITV4 Island Vote Gubernatorial Debate. Now, we're asking our state's two leading candidates questions on a variety of Hawaii's important issues. Before our third segment, we're bringing in the Lieutenant Governor candidates, Democrat Josh Green and Republican Marissa Kearns. Now, they were both invited and both confirmed. Ms. Kearns was invited and confirmed, but is not here with us tonight, so Ms. Tupola will try to answer some of those questions for her. All right. Right now, though, we're going to start with Mr. Ige.
Sure.
Mr. Ige, it didn't seem like Sean Sitsui had a very active or visible role in your administration. Do you envision more responsibility for Mr. Green?
I've certainly viewed the Lieutenant Governor as part of my cabinet, and I'm glad that Dr. Green, if we are successful and the voters select us, will become a part of that cabinet. You know, we talk about the biggest challenges facing the state, and we look at different ways that we can respond, and oftentimes it requires interagency collaboration and working together. You know, I gave the Lieutenant Governor those opportunities, and he chose not to get involved. I look forward to working with Dr. Green on those issues that he are passionate about. He's talked about homelessness and his H4 project. We've talked about physician shortage, and I certainly look forward to having an ER doc in the cabinet when we talk about opioid abuse and how we can do a better job of keeping opioids out of our communities.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to hear from you in just a moment, Mr. Green.
You bet.
All right, Ms. Tupola, should candidates for governor, and there's been talk about allowing candidates for governor to pick their own running mates, would you have Ms. Kearns as your first choice?
You know, I think for me, making sure that I have somebody that has the type of experience for the vision that we have for our state. And I think that one of her passions is cutting the cost of living. And I'm all about that. And so I definitely would choose a candidate that actually is prioritizing being a fiscal accountability teammate, that we can talk actively about how we can cut this in the state, as well as balancing all the 16 departments that sometimes have overrun budgets, sometimes have vacant buildings, expired contracts. So I think making sure to have somebody that can be a fiscal disciplinarian is a good option for Lieutenant Governor. So in the event that I get options for that, that of course is going to be my first choice.
So you would have picked her?
I think that she has a different style, but I definitely think that for her to be fiscally responsible is something that I am very in favor of.
All right, thank you. Mr. Green, how do you make sure that you're not the forgotten man in the Lieutenant Governor's office?
Well, first, let me just say it's an incredible honor to have been chosen in the primary to serve. I won't be forgotten because I bring a certain skill set. The moment that the primary ended, Governor Ige reached out to me. We've had a very warm relationship for many years. Remember, we've served for 6 years together as senators. We passed a lot of legislation together to help on crises like issues where we don't have enough health care providers. We've already worked together in these areas. We've already worked on the opioid crisis together. To be forgotten, it's virtually impossible for me, because when I reached out across to the family, to the Ige family, he said, I need you to be a complement to my team. We have a team already in place where I can be asked to add a certain perspective as a doctor on homelessness, a certain perspective on opioids, which is really plaguing all of our families, a certain perspective that you always need someone at your side. So I have to say, Don and the governor have been very warm with me and my family, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
And we'll start with you, Mr. Green. What are some of the responsibilities and duties that you specifically would be interested in being assigned to as the Lieutenant Governor if elected?
Well, first, the chronic homeless crisis. We have done very well as a team to bring down the numbers of the overall homeless individuals, but some are suffering, and they're suffering severely. When I go into the community as a doctor, I open free clinics, I see people who have mental illness, I see people who have addiction. To be able to weigh in on that issue for the governor, to be able to decrease what's a very small number of people consuming a very large part of our resource, 3.6% consume 61%, to be able to impact that, to get more services into the good programs the governor has already initiated, that's a big deal. And then I've seen addiction firsthand. Every weekend when I'm on the Big Island, and this is for many years, seeing people in crisis, in the throes of methamphetamine addiction, heroin addiction, I know where we have to put healthcare providers, nurse practitioners, and doctors. I know that these are the right priorities. The Gov has the right agenda, the right priorities. Now he's got an ally by his side, I think.
Ms. Tupola, I know that Ms. Kearns is not here with us today, but what are the specific responsibilities that you'd like to see her take over if you're elected?
There are 5 statutory duties within law that the Lieutenant Governor is over, and I think that she expressed in the last debate her willingness to be part of an inspector general, meaning that she wants to be a part of looking through fiscal spending, making sure that our special funds are correct, making sure that the departments are utilizing their budget correctly, and that there are checks and balances. It's actually a thing that we talked about in extent at the legislature, which is how are we still, after all these years, so much in debt, and yet still tell the people every year that they're going to raise taxes? It's something that I'm heavily opposed to, and as well as she. And we're going to make sure not to raise taxes, because we're going to become more efficient by having 4 pairs of eyes on each of these documents and making sure that each of the departments is held accountable, and that there is more public accounting for the use of funds as well as the programs that are utilizing these funds.
Now, for both of you, Mr. Ige and Ms. Tupola, and we'll start with you, Ms. Tupola, if something were to happen to you, do you believe Hawaii would be in good hands if your running mate was placed in charge?
You You know, I've known Ms. Kearns for a very short amount of time, but I do believe that her heart is in the right place and she cares about the people of Hawaii. And I feel like the path forward for us is making sure that there's an administration that's very robust. 16 departments, 160 boards and commissions. Everybody would have to bear the weight of that if that was to happen.
Mr. Ige, the same question with you.
I absolutely feel very comfortable, should I not be able to continue as governor, to have Dr. Green take over. You know, we are so aligned in all of the important priority areas. You know, we share the same values. We have the same priorities when it comes to public education, health and well-being of our communities, tackling the homelessness and housing situation, looking at making investments in the University of Hawaii. You know, there are virtually every single priority that we have as a government, Josh shares. And he's a doctor. I know that he's been through a lot of different things. He's an ER doc on top of that, so he's been through crisis. He's had to respond on very short notice with cool, calm collectiveness, and I'm certain that he would be able to perform as governor if needed.
And Paul, as a doc, I'm not letting anything happen to this guy, okay?
All right, thank you very much. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have closing statements from our two candidates running for governor. We'll be right back.
Live from the KITV4 Island News Studio, the Hawaii Gubernatorial Debate, a KITV4 Island Vote Special.
Welcome back. We're going to have one last question. It's for both of you, and you'll have 30 seconds to answer. It's going to go to you first, Mr. Tupola. This question comes from Patricia Mao via Facebook. And what she wants to know is, what are your intentions to focus on or to help curb the high rate of crime here in Hawaii? Because we see so much crime on a daily basis. Mr. Tupola, you have 30 seconds.
As governor, I'm going to address the revolving door that's going on in our state, arresting people, letting them go, not having enough prison spaces, not addressing the fact that we have a high rate of incarcerated individuals that are actually being shipped off to the mainland instead of keeping them home here, connected to their families and rehabilitation. My goal as governor is going to be to rehaul and revamp the public safety system, to not only adequately fund it, but make sure that we can actually keep all of our incarcerated individuals here, that we can start a transitionary program, that we can increase the amount of rehabilitation services, such as
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Your minute is up. Your 30 seconds is up. Mr. Ige, 30 seconds.
And I look forward to working with police departments all across the state, really focused on helping them fight crime. We've been doing adding additional grants to help prosecute career criminals all across in all of the counties. Most importantly, we've been increasing drug addiction and substance abuse funds for each of the counties. We implemented a new law enforcement assisted diversion program that tries to take criminals and divert them into treatment so that we can get them out of the revolving door.
Thank you very much. And we are now going to go to our final part of our show. And this is the closing statements. You have 1 minute and 30 seconds, and we're going to start with you, Ms. Tupola.
Thank you for watching the debate tonight. We cannot afford another 4 years of ignoring the systemic problems that are going on here in Hawaii. We cannot afford another 4 years of raising taxes and supporting a governor who's received an F rating for fiscal accountability every single year of his administration. We cannot afford another 4 years of record high funding for our departments with such a small impact. In Hawaii, Hawaii values are making sure that we prioritize our local residents, making sure that we support local businesses and our farmers. Hawaii values is making sure that we can actually keep our families connected to their culture, to this land, and to each other. Hawaii values is making sure that people can afford to live here and thrive, not just survive. And when we talk about affordability, and you're going to hear my opponent talk about affordable housing, we need to use a realistic definition of affordable, because the definition that they're using is not affordable for you and for me. In Hawaii, we live in such a beautiful place, and yet we are plagued and we are struggling because of the cost of living here. And we have career politicians that serve special interest groups, that work for political insiders, and continually ignore the exodus of doctors and teachers leaving our state, the increase of crime, inequitable funding for our schools, and unfair treatment for our neighbor island residents. I'm committed as governor for the state of Hawaii to change this and to actually work for each and every one of you. And I'm calling everyone out to come and vote.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Ige, 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Mahalo for the chance to discuss important issues at stake on November 6th. This election, you will be able to determine whether or not we continue my administration's record of progress, record of completing 5,300 new housing units with more on the way, record of reduction in homeless counts for 2 consecutive years for the first time, and making a college degree more affordable and accessible regardless of income. This election is an opportunity to move Hawaii forward. When we work together, we can continue to lead the country in fighting climate change, in common sense gun safety laws, and most importantly, in helping our family caregivers continue in the workforce as they take care of their loved ones. We have a president and a party, Republican Party, who is walking away from those priorities that we have. We can work together to stand up for Hawaii's values. You know, we reject racist immigration policies. We continue to fight for equality for all. We believe in health care and access for everyone. So I ask you to support me in this election so that we continue to move our communities forward, so that our children can have the opportunity for careers and affordable housing.
Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us. Aloha.